invite you to hear these words from the 4th chapter of Philippians, verses 4 through 13, where the Apostle Paul writes, "Rejoice in the Lord always. Again, I will say, rejoice. Let your gentleness be known to everyone. The Lord is near. Do not worry about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication, with thanksgiving, let your requests be made known to God. And the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guard your hearts and your minds in Christ Jesus. Finally, beloved, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is pleasing, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellence, and if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. Keep on doing the things that you have learned and received and heard and seen in me, and the God of peace will be with you. I rejoice in the Lord greatly that now at last you have revived your concern for me. Indeed, you were concerned for me, but had no opportunity to show it. Not that I am referring to being in need, for I have learned to be content with whatever I have. I know what it is to have little, and I know what it is to have plenty. In any and all circumstances, I have learned the secret of being well fed and of going hungry, of having plenty and of being in need. I can do all things through him who strengthens me. May we hear these words in our lives for this day and for always. Resilience. What does it mean to be resilient? How do we be resilient? Are some people just capable of being resilient and others not? Or is it something we all might be able to build in our lives? Resilience, being resilient. Dave? I still haven't figured out how to not have to go through all of this, but it does. This is from a TED Talk. I believe it's 2012. When the reporter becomes the story, it's about a man. It's by a man, Giles Dooley. Mr. Dooley was a photographer, fashion photographer. He did photos for big magazine spreads for clients that were trying to promote something. He was apparently a pretty good photographer. Had a great career. But somewhere along the line, he got discouraged and said, what am I doing? What's my life about? And he quit photography. Put his camera down. He became a caregiver. He's from Great Britain. And he became a caregiver for a young man named Nick, who is pretty extreme on the autism scale. He said he cared for Nick 24/7. Was a great experience for him in his life. He said he found out as he was caring for this young man that this young man was self-harming. In fact, his form of self-harming was to hit himself severely in the face. Mr. Dooley said he went to the social services and tried to share with them that Nick was self-harming and very, very severely self-harming, and asked them to provide more help. And they said, well, no, we're tracking him, we keep track of him, and we don't think it's that bad. Mr. Dooley said he suddenly realized he had the ability to help people understand what was going on. He picked up his camera again and started taking pictures of the young man, Nick, after he had severely self-harmed. He took the picture to social services. When they looked at the picture, they said, "Oh my goodness." and they began to kick into action. And they began to provide different kinds of treatment and support for the young man Nick. At the end of his talk, which we won't hear, but at the end of his talk, Mr. Dooley said, he talked to the young man Nick the night before he gave his talk, and he said Nick was doing much better and no longer self-harming. Well, Mr. Dooley said after he told Nick's story, he realized he had the ability to tell stories with his camera. And so he started going to difficult places in our world, refugee camps. He lived with street people in Lisbon. He went to other places taking pictures to share stories of people who were going through difficult circumstances. He went to war zones. And finally, he went to Afghanistan. While he was in Afghanistan, he stepped on an IED, a very explosive device, and lost both legs and an arm. Here he is in his TED Talk.
For me to document them. Then in February of last year, when I was on patrol in Afghanistan, I stepped on an IED. That's me down there somewhere. I became part of the story. At first, I was devastated by what had happened, obviously. I thought my work was over. I thought everything didn't make sense to me. And then I realized I never set out to Congo, to Angola, to Bangladesh, to take photographs. I went to those places because I wanted to make some kind of change. And photography happened to be my tool. And then I became aware that my body was in many ways a living example of what war does to somebody. And I realized I could use my own experience, my own body, to tell that story. And it was also by looking back at the other people I documented. I thought of Nick and I thought of his resilience. I thought of the Rohingyas and the fact that they have no hope. I thought of Lilik and her lost life. And in fact, it's the stories that I've documented that inspired me to get through the last year, to survive, to get back up on my new legs, and to be able to come and tell their stories, but also my own story. So I did a self-portrait, because I wanted to show everybody what a bomb does to somebody, but also to show that losing your limbs doesn't end your life, that you can have what people see as disability, but not be disabled, that you can be able to do anything if you put your mind to it and have belief in it. It's strange, but in many ways I look at where I was a year ago and I look at where I am now and I realise that I have a lot of things I didn't have then. I wouldn't be sitting here right now if this hadn't happened. I wouldn't be able to have shown you those photographs and to tell you those stories. I was lucky 10 years ago when I sat down and I tried to work out what I could do to make a difference in this world. I realised that my photography was a tool and a way to do it. I think that's what's really key, is that we all can be part of that wheel. We can all be cogs in a wheel of change. We can all make a difference. Everybody here has an ability to use something to make a difference to the world.
Resilience. I sent out a question on Facebook, and if you're on our church app, I hope you got a little message. I don't know if you did or not. I got one. Pretty good using the church app, but I get it. But I asked the question, how do you define resilience? What's your definition of resilience? And who do you know in your life who's showed you resilience? And in what ways have you been resilient? Now, I realize in picking the subject of resilience, I'm speaking to a huge group of people who exhibit tremendous resilience. And so in some ways I'm saying, well, we don't need to talk about this, do we? That You know, we already know how to be resilient. I mean, I know some of your stories, and you are resilient. So why do we need to talk about this? Well, I'll come back to that in a little bit, but let's talk about what resilient might be. Dictionary definition of resilient is the ability to recover quickly from illness, change, or misfortune. Buoyancy. I'm just quoting the dictionary. The property of a material that enables it to resume its original shape or position after being bent, stretched, or compressed. Elasticity. Now, what about human resilience? I found a website by Nan Henderson, who's a social worker. Nan Henderson defines resilience this way. She says, resilience is the ability to overcome challenges of all kinds, trauma, tragedy, personal crises, plain old life problems, and bounce back stronger, wiser, and more personally powerful. Resilience is the ability to overcome challenges of all kinds, trauma, tragedy, personal crisis, plain old life problems, and bounce back stronger, wiser, and more personally powerful. Resilience. The ability to come back from difficult experiences. But I like what Ms. Henderson says, to come back stronger, wiser, and more personally powerful. I think our world is in need of resilience. I went through the paper yesterday and just found a few instances where people might benefit from being resilient. It goes like this. Hurricanes, such as the one happening in Florida right now, and we already have people in our community. Laura Carcelari said her family evacuated from Orlando. Keith went down to get them, and so they have family here with them now, and so there's some resilience necessary caused by the hurricane, and they're not even there. But the hurricane's hitting Orlando, but it's not just the current hurricane. There's another one coming, and maybe another one. Plus, there was one in Texas, Louisiana, so now there's flooding. A little resilience is needed. Wars and conflicts, threat of war. Maybe some resilience is necessary. How about hacking of our personal information? Who knows what they found out about me? Probably not much, but who knows? Earthquakes. Biggest earthquake in Mexico. They were a nation that had the capacity to handle a terrible earthquake. Wildfires in the Northwest. People are told to stay inside. Don't get out. Stay inside. Loss of homes. I see the people in Texas, in Houston, and other areas of Texas, their homes are still underwater. Not because it's still raining, because they have to lower the lake levels, let water out, in case it does rain again. Loss of stuff, loss of personal, valuable things that are meaningful to us. Illness, yeah, we got our share of that. Medical treatment, as great as surgery is, as great as chemo is, as great as radiation and other treatments are, in and of itself, the treatment is sometimes extremely difficult. Death. Loss of those whom we love, who are so important in our lives. Boy, there's a time when we could use some resilience. Relationship challenges. Struggles in our relationships, whether they be intimate relationships, friendships, work relationships, whatever. Sometimes resilience is demanded. Manage your own lives. I mean, sometimes I get so darn discouraged, like today, and I just say, hey, maybe it's time to hang it up, John. And then I look at Mr. Dolney and say, what are you whining about, John? I mean, I look at my life and life around me, it's pretty darn good. So why can't I be resilient and bounce back? Let me talk a little bit about what I think resilience is not. Resilience is not living a charmed life where everything's always okay. That's not being resilient. If somebody lives a charmed life and nothing bad ever happens, maybe they get a hangnail, I don't know, then that's not being resilient. That's just living a charmed life. So far I haven't met anybody that's in that place, but that's not resilience. Resilience does not mean avoiding hurt, pain, and difficulty. Resilience is when we live and experience the fullness of the pain. When we feel the whole brunt of that injury to our bodies, our psyches, our being, and then we come back. Resilience is not stoicism. And by that I mean resilience is not saying, oh, I'm just going to be okay no matter what happens. I will choose not to let myself feel at all. I'll hold it in. I'll never cry. I'll never hurt. I'll never get angry. I'll never lash out. I'll just hold it all in. That's not resilience. That's denying reality. Resilience is not saying that nothing or anybody can hurt me, because we all are vulnerable, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. But John, didn't you hear that text? The Apostle Paul, rejoice! Rejoice in the Lord. I say again, rejoice always. So does that mean, well, no matter what, we're just supposed to go around and be joyful? No. It means that we are to seek God's presence no matter what's going on, and see if we can find something for which we can say, the next verse says it, thank you. It might even be thank you that is not even worse. I got inspired for this series by reading Sheryl Sandberg, who's the CEO of Facebook, and Adam Grant, who's professor of psychology at Wharton Business School. They have a book called Option B, and it's real simple. If option A doesn't work, go to option B. And right now, I think I'm on option Z in my life, but nevertheless, option B, and I was fascinated there because one of the pieces of advice, and you'll hear this again, but one of the pieces of advice was, well, think about how it could be worse. And Sheryl Sandberg says to Adam Grant, that's stupid. But the data says it's extremely helpful. Think about how it could be worse. find something for which you can say thanks. And then Paul goes on to say, I have learned to be content. Now, content does not mean satisfied. He's not a stoic saying, well, I'm okay no matter what. But I have learned to seek to live and continue to be who I am no matter what. Whether I'm hungry or well-fed, whether I'm beaten, whether I'm shipwrecked, whether I'm with a group of people who really like me, if I'm getting the barbs and arrows from all those people who think that I am the biggest idiot, I'm quoting Paul, the biggest idiot in the world for promoting the gospel and love of Jesus Christ, I have learned to experience life in its fullness, no matter what. And then he goes on to say, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And I used to understand that and say, oh, well, that means I can do anything. I can just do anything. No, I think what he's trying to say is, I continue to be me, no matter what. Here's my definition of what resilient means. I say to be resilient means we have the capacity to continue loving no matter what. Resilience is the capacity to continue loving no matter what. In their book, Option B, Ms. Sandberg and Mr. Grant goes on to say that they like to, quote, think of resilience like a muscle, one that atrophies in the calm between the storms of our lives. But there are things we can do to develop it so we're better prepared when adversity strikes. Boy, that hit home for me. I'm going to read it again in a minute, okay? But that hit home for me because I like to think, oh, I got through that last tough time. I'll be okay now. And then something sneaks up on me. Boom. I'm flat on my face again. What about using those in-between times, John, to build resilience? Here's what they say again. They like to, quote, think of resilience like a muscle, one that atrophies in the calm between the storms of our lives. But there are things we can do to develop it, so we're better prepared when adversity strikes. Can we build resilience? Well, I'm not going to answer that today, but over the next several weeks, we're going to be talking about that together. I've already invited first service. I invite you, if you have ideas on how we can build our capacity for resilience, please share them. And I've already seen you be resilient, but I think there's a little bit more to resilience. If resilience is a capacity to love no matter what, then resilience is not just some sort of internal personal thing I experience and say, oh, well, I survived that and I'm even stronger than I was because I went through that. Well, that's okay. But I think true resilience takes community. Now, the Apostle Paul, in writing that little section from Philippians, that's the 4th chapter, he says, well, I'm glad you decided to care for me again, which is a code word for, I'm glad you sent me some money. You didn't need to. I would have been fine without it, and I think he's serious. But the reality is, because the church at Philippi offered support to Paul, I think that helped him build resilience. So we do not build resilience just so we can be okay. We build resilience to help other people. couple of weeks ago, Angela talked to her children about filling buckets. We fill buckets with positive, good things. That's how we fill buckets. Positive affirmation, support, encouragement. And we can fill flood buckets. Phil and Mimi brought these buckets. There's instruction on here how to put together a flood bucket with everything that's needed. I will say I've been told by the folks who work with the United Methodist Committee on Relief that manages these, please get the items that they say are necessary. Don't substitute. If you do, then they have to unpack them all and repack them again. So they need to be put together properly. And I think we offer resilience to others when we are resilient enough to put together some flood buckets, or you can go to UMCOR, United Methodist Committee on Relief, and you can make a contribution, and that helps tremendously. Or you can go on our church app and under give, there's even something there now you can give directly through the church to UMCOR through our church. So however you want to do that, that's fine. But I'm reminded of our father in the faith, Abraham. God came to Abraham and said, I will bless you forever. I will bless you. I will bless you so you will be a blessing. Well, what about if we think of resilience in the same way? God will help us be resilient so we can help each other, our church, our community, our world, build the capacity for resilience.